Okay, so before we dive into this software tool, it's first really important to know that iAbacus is based on an improvement model. Okay, a really good friend of mine came up with this. He was a head teacher for 40 years, and he was a brilliant school improver. He was an inspector for a short while. Okay, he literally had an abacus. This was one of his. I stole it off his desk, and he would use this to discuss school improvement and self-evaluation, and he'd literally like pick it up and say, look, if this bead represents quality of education or behavior management or some aspect of revision, where are you if over here is excellent? And he'd talk about criteria like the criteria in the toolkit. He'd talk about what's helping, what's got you to this position, what's pushed you to here, and what's hindering you, and what are you going to do about it. A fantastic model. I don't do it justice when I pick up this abacus, but really was something that worked very well. And when we saw it and got to know how it was being used, we turned it into this online tool. And I'll be honest, the thing we tried to do was not break the process, not break that model, because it worked. So what you're going to see today is iAbacus. It's based on this universal process. You can use it to improve or evaluate and improve pretty much anything. Okay, so it makes sense that as a school leader, you get hold of it and you use it to do your school self-evaluation and your school improvement plan. But it is also something that you can deploy to middle leaders, colleagues that have areas of responsibility. We've got staff using it to look at their own professional growth, and we even use it with learners, evaluating where they are on their growth journey, on their development. So let me just show you what it looks like visually. You may have seen it before, but if I share my screen, then we'll get into how it works, what it looks like, and how then you can log in and use it yourself. So first of all, with iAbacus, you have these templates, okay, and they're just frameworks that fit into our abacus format. So straight away down the left hand side, you can see areas from the new Ofsted Toolkit or the Ofsted framework, and then levels across the top. Okay, but this is just one abacus, and we are focusing on this later, but I'll just give you a quick tour of some of the other abacuses that you can access. So you might be looking at attendance in your school or in your setting. Well, there's an abacus for that based on the EEF. There's one for behavior, there's one for teachers to use, we have them for learners, as I mentioned, and they're all in this same format. Okay, the language might change. What we evaluate down the left and maybe across the top, you can see here we've just got star ratings and a different color scheme. So the idea is that once we understand this universal model, we can use it confidently to evaluate and improve anything. Okay, so let me log into it. It's iabacus.me, that's where we log in. Okay, and then we either create an account or we log in with our password. Now, when you first get access to iAbacus, all you'll need to do is click sign in with Microsoft down here. Okay, and if you're logged into your Microsoft account, then that will just take you straight into Abacus. The only thing you'll need to do is put a license code in, which will make sure you have after this session, or you may already have that. Okay, so let me click login, and hopefully it'll just take me into my account. Okay, I might just have to refresh. Here we go. So I log in. Okay, I've got loads of folders and loads of abacuses on my home screen. Yours will be nice and clean. You won't have anything on here to start with. Okay, but all you'll do is go up to new abacus and you'll choose the relevant template for your school, and you may potentially see a huge list of templates in here. Okay, templates with different school frameworks on, staff kind of competencies and improvement frameworks for individuals, subject areas, themes. I mentioned attendance, behavior, Gatsby benchmarks, reading, all sorts of templates. Okay, I'm just going to focus on the Ofsted Toolkit. Okay, when it came out, we dropped it into the abacus. It made perfect sense. Okay, this is not an Ofsted tool. It's just a tool that helps us evaluate and improve, and it makes sense to use the relevant framework. So let me pick up the Ofsted Toolkit. I'm going to hit continue. It's going to drop me into an empty abacus. Okay, areas down the left hand side, levels across the top. All you need to do, I say all you need to do, there's going to be some deep thinking that takes place after this, but all you will do is pick up the bead and slide it somewhere onto this row. Okay, now this is your initial gut judgment. Okay, we're not looking at the toolkit, the criteria just yet. We're just making an initial professional judgment about where you think things are. So I've picked up this bead for inclusion and I'm dragging it on this row, and we might say, do you know what, in our setting, in our school, I think we're really good at this. I'm going to put it top end of strong. Okay, as soon as you do that, it launches into this improvement process. These are the 4 stages that John literally used with this abacus. Okay, what are they? Firstly, checking that judgment we've made against criteria. Okay, if it was a gut judgment, even if it's a professional judgment, we still need to validate it against some agreed criteria, and that's where the toolkit is going to come into play. Okay, next, logical step. If we're saying we're at this point, what evidence do we have to justify that judgment? What can we signpost to prove we really are at that point? Okay. Also, let's analyze why we're at that point. Okay. And you'll see we just do a dead simple analysis. What's helping? What's hindering? That's all we need to list. And then we can do something about those things. Okay. So this is the process. Let's look at the criteria. Okay. Well, it makes sense. We're using the Ofsted framework. Let's look at the toolkit. Okay, so in the toolkit, these are the gradings, the different levels that Ofsted inspectors will judge you against. But actually, this is the perfect criteria for us to use to reflect on. Okay, so browse through it, have a look at it. Okay, I've dropped this bead into strong. Okay, but it might be I look through this criteria, I glance over at the expected standard, and I decide actually maybe that's more like where we are. Okay, and that's fine. We just move that bead around. Okay, if you want to look at the actual toolkit, there is actually no need because the criteria is here. But if you want to open it up, we've kind of linked to the relevant section, in this case inclusion, and we're going to drop straight into the toolkit. Okay, we try to keep it simple, so we've actually extracted it and put it on here for you. Okay, so that's making a judgment. Okay, checking it against criteria. Let's move on to the next stage. Okay, the next stage is a bit more work for you, if I'm honest. You're going to have to start thinking about what evidence to signpost in your school, in your setting, to justify that judgment. And all we really want you to do is to describe your evidence. And then if you've got it in a Microsoft folder or in a Microsoft file, just link to it. Okay, you don't have to start moving files around necessarily. So let me just put some evidence statements in here. Okay, I prefer bullet points, keeps it really concise. It kind of makes me be evaluative. I can say, I've got this survey, we did it with parents, it shows this, okay, and then attach that survey or attach that report. Okay, don't try and paste loads of tables of data in here. Okay, keep it concise, golden paragraphs or bullet points. Let's put some bullet points in here, and you can see that you just edit this, see this data, it shows we are blah, whatever it may be. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just drop some links in this bottom side here, okay, this bottom right hand side. Okay, if you want to upload a file, you can do, you just do it on this side over here. Okay, if you want to be really techie, okay, and you want to hyperlink something up here, you can do. Okay, so let's say you mention a survey and you put it in an Excel file, the results are in the Excel file, you can select that, you could click on link, and actually you could put a link to that MS Drive or whatever it may be where that file is. Okay, and let's say it's got some random web address that we just need to put in here. Okay, if I insert that, you can see that it's just linked to that text. Okay, it's quite a nice feature because it means that your evidence statement, you keep it really short and concise, but actually you just link off to all that detail. Okay, so that's your evidence. Okay, again, there's a little link up here. If you want to look in the toolkit, you can drop into the toolkit. It's going to have the information about gathering evidence specifically for inclusion or leadership or attendance, whatever it is you're evaluating. It's going to be the guidance is just there for you. Okay, so we're happy so far. We've made a judgment. We've slid that bead. We checked it against the criteria. We've signposted out some evidence. Okay, gets a bit more interesting now, because now we're going to go through to the analysis. Okay, so when you make that judgment, you stop that bead at some point. Okay, but there are things that you're doing in that school, in your school, that have got you to this position. What are they? These are the helping factors. Okay, what's helping, what's hindering? So on this left hand side, celebrate your successes, things that are going really well, and just list them. Okay, everything you can think of that's helping with inclusion, if that's what we're evaluating, drop it into the tool. Okay, a bit like bullet points. If something's a really big help, okay, made a really positive impact, what we can do, we can put it in, whatever it may be, and we can even drag it to the top. Okay, celebrate your successes. Okay, you're going to be showcasing these things. They're going to be in that final report. Okay, even if you mention something that's already in your evidence, don't worry about that. Just re-emphasize it just here. Okay, let's go through to the hindering factors. Sometimes people are scared of negative language. Oh, lack of this, insufficient this, overly complex this. Okay, don't be. In here, just list the hindering factors, put them in. We've got this issue in our school. We've got lack of this. This just takes too much time. This is overly complicated. Whatever it is, put it in. Okay, because it's these hindering factors that you need to tackle. Okay, if you don't do anything about the helps and the hinders, the bead will stay where it is. Okay, we've got to tackle the hindering factors. There might be something actually that's a really urgent challenge in your school and it's holding you back with regards to whatever it is you're evaluating. Okay, you can put it in, you can move it to the top. Okay, so helps and hinders. You do that diagnostic, it's going to set up your action planning, because in this next stage here, here's the things we've said are already we're doing well and they're helping, and we might need to do those more often. We might need to strengthen them. So sometimes there are actions based on these things, but also we know that these are the barriers. These have stopped us putting that bead into exceptional or strong. So we need to tackle them. Okay, but before you dive into working on the actions on these, okay, let's be realistic. You can't work on all of these. Okay, there's not going to be enough time and resources and people within your school. So prioritize. Okay, and the way that I think the easiest way to prioritize is to hide the ones that you're not going to work on. So I think the first thing to do is just go down this far right hand side and just hide those that are not your priority. Okay, they might not even be in your circle of influence at the moment. Okay, so take them out. Okay, they're still here. They're in the analysis. We're not saying we're naive and we don't know they're there, but we're just saying they're not our priority. So prioritize. Okay, maybe even move something to the top that you really need to work on as a school or as a leadership team. Okay, and then on the left hand side here, can you see this little icon? You just expand it and you get a planning strip. Okay, what are we going to do about this issue? Who's going to support or lead on it? What does success look like, and when do we need to do it by? Okay, and you can put this in place for anything, any helping or hindering factor. Okay, if I'm a middle leader using this tool and I've done some diagnostic about my department, my subject area, same planning strip. Okay, it's a universal planning strip. Let's put an action in here. What are we going to do? Okay, I've got a little tool that does this typing for me. I think people would like to buy that rather than iAbacus sometimes. But here we go. I'm going to drop in this action. Okay, frequency or maybe a one-off event. Let's put something in here. Maybe we need to do this once a year, actually. Okay, and we might start it on this point. Okay, often you've started this action already because you knew it was something you needed to do. So maybe there's even some progress already in place. Okay, so slide that progress slider and say, actually, we've started this, and actually this is what we've done. Okay, so let's just recap, because we've literally just done the whole abacus process. We slid a bead to a certain level. We might have been really optimistic and put it right up here. Okay, we then looked at the criteria, which made us actually just moderate that judgment and say, hold on a minute, maybe actually we're down here. Okay, that would be a big jump, wouldn't it? But just for demo purposes, we'll show it's possible. We then looked at our evidence, signposting. Okay, we're not creating evidence. We're just saying this survey, this report, this data, this feedback, this work with our school improvement partner, it shows we're at this level. Okay, analysis, helping and hindering factors. Just two things. It's not even as complicated as SWOT analysis. It's simpler than that. Okay, if we know what's hindering, we can do something about it. If we know what's helping, we can do something about those things too. That's our action plan. And that's why with this tool, you end up with a SEF and a SIP, a school self-evaluation and a school improvement plan. It's not like you need like 2 separate documents. It's not like you're doing an audit, which kind of stops at the judgment part and doesn't actually let you do the action planning. This is end to end. It's the full conduit. Okay. This is where we need to start judgment and then end up with action. And if we look here, we can do the same process for the other beads. Okay, it's exactly the same process. We don't need to learn something else about looking at the curriculum or looking at teaching. We just check the criteria and follow that process. So you'll end up with an abacus with beads that represent where you are currently. Okay, let's put those all on here. Okay, I missed one there, attendance and behaviour. Let's put that right up here. Okay, there may be areas that you don't need to evaluate. Okay, post 16 might not be something you have in your school in your setting. Okay, now you can just ignore it and just not slide a bead and it won't be in your final report. Okay, but you might want to customize this abacus. If you want to customize it, you go up here, click on customize. Okay, you can take out areas, just take them out. Okay, later down the line, it might be actually you decide we like this tool. It's just a really simple process. Let's use it to evaluate some other things. A lot of schools will say, actually, what else do we need to work on? We might need to work on pupil numbers. Okay, that was something that came up last week in a group that I was working with. So actually, abacuses are customizable. Okay, which means that you can just use the same process to evaluate something else. So that's why we've got other abacuses that you can use. And other abacuses that you can invite colleagues to use, because it's quite an empowering process. I don't know if you noticed that, how empowering it is to go through these stages. Okay, so you've got your abacus, it's full of all these beads on here, and you want to share it with somebody else. Okay, now within your organization, the wider organization, okay, it's going to be really good if you collaborate with senior colleagues, whether that's a regional lead, whether that's a school improvement partner, actually, whether that's a fellow head teacher that you want to share your abacus with. Okay, so what you can do is you can just share it online. You can invite them to collaborate. Okay, so I'm going to drop into collaborate. We just put an email address in and that will send it to them. And if they've got an account, it will help them to open it up in their account. Okay, so you just put down at opius.com if you were sending it to me. Okay, but when you do that, you can actually choose the level of permission you're going to give that person. You might be just inviting them as a viewer. Okay, you don't want them to touch your beads, they're fine. You don't want those beads moving around, like you don't want your evidence touching, just invite them as a viewer. Okay, but you might want them to contribute to it, or you want them to edit it with you. Okay, so you've got some levels of permissions there. Okay, the easiest way to share your abacus is to export it as a PDF document. Okay, all you do, export PDF, export it, download it. Okay, and here is a PDF with every bit of input you've put into your abacus. So let's have a look. We put this inclusion bead up here. We slid it eventually to needs attention. We can click on it within the document. We've got our evidence, our signposting. Remember that we pointed to the files. In fact, that link that we put in, that's just here now. Okay, so if I'm reading this PDF as a governor or as a colleague, and I want to look at that survey data, if I've got access to it in your drive, I can just click on there and go straight to it. Okay, dead simple. Helps and hinders. Okay, how important are those helps and hinders now? Because if I'm looking at your school, I want to know that you've got a really good grip on what you do well, but what the challenges are. So they're in there. And then if we know what's hindering us, here's the action plan. So this is a really powerful document. Okay, now if you are in that Ofsted window and that call happens, you get a planning call. Okay, which actually is an online meeting like this. Okay, and one of the things they're going to ask you in that planning call is where you think you are against the new toolkit. Okay, well, that's that screen. And then they might want to talk to you about how you know you're at that point. Well, isn't that just our evidence? And actually, what are you going to do to improve or sustain your performance? Well, that's our helps and hinders, and that's our action plan. So that conversation, you can lead it, you can be empowered to know everything you need to know just from your abacus report. Okay, and we got to that place by just following those 4 stages. Okay, and that's why this tool is very simple. Okay, it's not overly complicated, but it really does put you in a strong position of knowing where you are, why you're at that point, and then what you need to do to improve, or what you need to do to sustain where you're currently at. Okay, so let's just fast forward for a moment. Let's go a whole year down the line. Okay, you log back into your Abacus. I'd hope you'd log into it a bit more frequently than annually, but I'll be honest, I did a business plan and then it was about 6 months before I logged back into my Abacus. Okay, and I log back in and I look at those beads and I think, actually, we're not kind of needs attention anymore. We carried out some of those actions. You might want to just move the bead up a bit. Okay, and that's fine. You can do that. But let me just show you something else that iAbacus allows you to do. Okay, let's leave that bead just there. You can actually pick up another new bead and effectively make a new judgment. And you can say, do you know what, we were here because we had loads of hindering factors at that point in time, and we were working on lots of different things, but we've tackled them now. And I actually think we've moved right up to here. Okay, let's say here. Okay, and you drop that bead, it knows that you've made a new judgment. Okay, it knows that you've put a new bead on here, things have improved, and it just says, do you want to copy everything onto that new bead? Well, I would say you probably do. Okay, you want to move everything onto that new bead, because now what we've got is a new bead here. This is where we currently are now. The old bead where we were, that's faded out. Okay, that's history. But look what it's showing. It's actually showing that we've moved. Okay, and now we don't need to start again. We pick up that bead and we think, okay, let's just check the criteria. And maybe you just have another look. Okay, definitely you meet that criteria. Okay, your evidence, well, okay, maybe you've got some new data and it shows improvement. It shows improved attendance, better inclusion practices. Okay, so you put that new evidence in here. In your analysis, there will have been some hindering factors that you can just get rid of. Okay, we're not moving them around, we're not hiding them now, we're just taking them off. They're not hindering factors anymore in our organization. Okay, but actually you've got some new challenges. Okay, some key leaders in your school have left. You've got a different cohort of learners that are more challenging than before. Okay, whatever that might be, you put it in and you put those new challenges in. And you say, actually, what are we going to do about those? Well, it's the same thing. It's the plan. What are we going to do? Okay, and that's your new Abacus. It's just a new live snapshot of where you currently are. So that's how the tool works. Okay, pretty much that's everything you need to know. You log in, you make an Abacus, you follow those processes, 4 stages for every bead. Okay, and then you share your Abacus with whoever you need to. And when you log in for that first time, have a look maybe around some of these other templates. Okay, maybe have a look at the one that you can use with learners if you want to help them on their journey, because it's exactly the same process. Okay, nothing really changes in iAbacus, only the templates. So I could pick up DBT informed interventions with learners, and I could say, actually, where do we think this learner is with regards to distress tolerance or their emotional regulation? And you say, I think they're here. Same process. Okay, and that's why it's a universal tool. And you have been funded through, I think, one head teacher account for each school. You can extend that. You can look at other abacuses, but hopefully you're going to get hold of this and kind of storm through creating your self-evaluation and your improvement plan and be in a really empowered position. So let's just stop the share for a moment. I can dive